Good morning. My name is Jennifer Ryan, and on behalf of the Alliance of Women in Workers' Compensation, I want to welcome you to today's webinar. Today's webinar is titled The Art of Entrepreneurship, will last approximately 1 hour and is a pre-recorded webinar being broadcasted today, Thursday, August 24th, 2023. Before we get started, I would like to thank our 2023 corporate sponsors for their support on hosting events such as this. They support us not because they want their logos up on a screen, but they support the cause, which is to affect positive change in the workers' compensation industry through networking, support, mentoring, and collaboration. The Alliance is inclusive of all professionals in workers' compensation, regardless of career stage, with the belief that we can all learn from and support each other. I would also like to specifically thank the WCI conference for sponsoring today's webinar, gifting us with recording and editing the session. We truly appreciate all the support throughout the years of the Alliance. Please be sure to head to the AWWC website for all upcoming events. This year, we have been able to host webinars, collaboration sessions, as well as in-person events, both national and ambassador-led. Be sure to check back on our website for registration details. If you could not make one of our live, virtual, or national in-person events, don't worry. Webinars and our main national events will be recorded and on demand for our followers. Our theme this year is Together Towards Tomorrow. Be sure to join in these discussions as we facilitate both virtual and in-person events. Have you joined our book club yet? If you love reading books, be sure to head to the AWWC website to sign up to join the club, as you still have time to join this year. Change is preceded with trust. It is through acceptance and inclusion that trust will be formed and positive impact will occur. The Alliance is committed to creating a safe space in the workers' compensation industry for women of diverse backgrounds and experiences through a shared culture that integrates various perspectives. This is who we are and who we will be. The time to do better and be better is now. The Alliance understands that diversity is a journey that will take time to make meaningful changes for our organizations, its followers, and supporters. We will be intentional in making progress along our key pillars of change. Have you ever wondered what drives individuals to embark on the exhilarating path of entrepreneurship? Is it an inherent trait, a product of their upbringing, or a transformative life event that ignites their desire to create something extraordinary? Join us today for the Art of Entrepreneurship, an inspiring webinar that delves deep into the experiences, lessons, and insights of esteemed women of entrepreneurs. In this thought-provoking webinar, we will bring together a panel of trailblazing women who have defied convention, shattering glass ceilings, and built successful businesses from the ground up. This webinar goes beyond mere storytelling, providing attendees with invaluable lessons and insights garnered from years of entrepreneurial experiences. Our panelists will dive into the challenges they faced, the risks they took, and the strategies they employed to overcome obstacles and thrive in their respective companies. I have had the esteemed privilege to be the moderator of today's webinar. My name is Jennifer Ryan, and I am the Chief Revenue Officer of ForzaCare. My panelists today are Artemis Emsley, Chief Executive Officer of Cadence RX, Lisa Honish, former Chief Executive Officer of Unimed Direct, an Enlight company, and Mary Jo Stormont, Chief Executive Officer of ForzaCare. Although this is a pre-recorded webinar, please feel free to add comments in the chat feature through the Zoom chat feature seen on your screen. We love seeing our followers engaged throughout our session. Thank you for the time you're spending with us today, and we hope you enjoy this webinar.
Well, welcome, ladies. I am just honored to spend some time with you on the topic of art of entrepreneurship. The three women right here on stage have been mentors, have been individuals that I've looked up to through my whole career. So again, I just feel so honored that you're my friends and I get to interview you. So we're just gonna pretend that we're on my back patio drinking a glass of wine, even though we don't have one, and we're just having a conversation. So I'm Jennifer Ryan. I'm the vice president of the board of the Women's Alliance, and I've been involved with the Alliance since 2019 on the board. And throughout this journey, I have been able to see so many different individuals come in and out of my life and have inspired me. And through this journey has inspired me to do something new, which is launching a company with Mary Jo on Forza Care. And from that, this topic, so many people ask us about entrepreneurship and a lot of other topics, but this is a topic that we've really not had a webinar on. So I'm really excited today that the three of you have so graciously decided to spend your time. We've all been at WCI for a week. We're exhausted, but we've pepped up our energy and we're just gonna roll right into it. So I'm gonna start off, Artemis, Lisa, Mary Jo, let's just go through, introduce yourselves, give me a little bit of background, and we'll go from there. Sound good?
Yes, thank you, Jen. It is a pleasure to be here, and it's such a fun topic. My name is Artemis Emsley. I am the CEO and founder of Cadence RX. I'm based in Tampa, Florida, and I also have longevity with the Alliance of Workers' Compensation, having founded the Alliance and a part of the Alliance since 2015. So excited to be here and having this topic. Thank you, Jen.
This is very exciting because these three people are mean so much to me, and they're great leaders in our industry. And yes, I'm the one with the gray hair. I've been in workers' comp for over 40 years, and it is something that is just inside of me. I loved it, and it's hard to say that you love workers' comp, but I really loved workers' comp. And I can't quite get out of it. I'm semi-retired. I was the CEO of Unimed Direct, sold my company to Mitchell, now called Enlight, and that was 6 years ago. And so now I get to serve on boards. I love trying to help other women especially become entrepreneurs and try to figure out what can we do to bring more women into this industry that I've truly loved for over 40 years.
Thanks, Lisa. I think you're the busiest retired person I know. I'm Mary Jo Stormont, and I'm the CEO and a founder of Forza Care, as Jen mentioned. Prior to that, I had the opportunity to be very involved in a startup and lead the Alaris Group into a sale to Paradigm, where I worked for a number of years before I took a little sabbatical. I've been involved with the Alliance for quite some time. I started off as an ambassador in Minnesota and South Dakota, and then Lisa, being one of my mentors and great advocates, actually asked if I would be willing to take her place as a treasurer on the board of directors, which I think was about in 2018. So it's been a while, and it's been a great experience.
Well, thank you. So we have to start from the beginning. Obviously, I want to fast forward because we're in 2023, but let's start from where it all started. So Lisa, I want to direct this question with you. Can you share a little bit about your upbringing and how did it influence you on your journey towards entrepreneurship?
That's a very fascinating question. I mean, I can talk about my upbringing, and it starts with I'm adopted. And I never really felt fully connected to my adopted family. Very conservative family, wonderful upbringing, and as a wholesome upbringing. But it was in a traditional model where women don't really have a place at the table. Women don't have a place in the workforce. Women didn't need to go to college. And it was an interesting influence that I can't quite decide. Is it part of that being adopted? I was different. I knew I was different, and so I'm going to go be different. Or is it that I had to prove something? Or is it simply my stubbornness that I wasn't going to accept that women don't have a place at the table?
So we all have different journeys, right? And so what I love about, I want Artemis to chime in here, is that we all have different reasons why we do things. And Lisa, you have your story, right? But it's not everyone else's story, it's your story. And then Artemis, you have your own story. So tell me, what about you? What was your upbringing like and how did it influence you?
Yeah, so mine is almost the opposite, Lisa. I grew up in a household that's a really strong mom that worked and believed that her daughters should be uber independent and pave their own way and not rely on anybody else. Though that influence and guidance was really strong in my journey to become an entrepreneur. I can say growing up, I wasn't even thinking that I was ever going to be even in business, never mind entrepreneur. But I also, in reflection, realized that not only was my mom a very strong influence on that, but I also had a lot of family members that were entrepreneurs. They had different businesses. So there was influence all around me that helped me think about things differently. And again, it wasn't about I started a business early or anything like that. It was the influence of the folks that are around me that I didn't even know at the time. But if I had to give credit to one person, it would absolutely be my mom and her drive to make sure that her daughters were independent.
No, I love that. As you look back on your own journey, like you said, you don't realize in the moment that they're shaping you or that has defined you. But now that you're here and you can step back, I think it's great for us to have these conversations so that younger generations can see that if you might be lost or you might not have that aha moment right away, but just believe in the journey and know where you're at, and it will instill you to where you are today. So I'm going to take it now, all three of you guys. It's instilled. You're entrepreneurs. You're very successful in what you've done. It doesn't happen without a little bit of hiccups, right? So nothing is perfect. So I want to ask Mary Jo, was there any failures or setbacks you encountered in your entrepreneur journey? And how did you bounce back from them? How did you not give up and be like, all right, I'm done?
Oh my goodness, I think that we probably on a daily basis. Do you ladies agree? I think this journey is full of incredible successes and incredible failures. And when you're early in that entrepreneurial period and you're early in startup, like we are at Forza Care today, but those failures sometimes feel really, really big. But you know what? You just have to keep failing forward and understand and say, what do we learn? Where are we going? And how do we adjust? I think the other thing is just setting yourself up for the expectation to making some missteps or failures or whatever you want to call them along that journey. And then you have the expectation that they're going to occur, and then they don't feel quite as significant along the way.
Now, Lisa, you've not had any failures, have you?
Oh, never. Yeah. Maybe not in the last 3 seconds, but you know, I think one of the exciting parts of starting a company is having a vision and watching it unfold. And you see all the different ideas. One of the hardest things is making sure you stay focused. And you can get so distracted at, oh, I could do that too. Oh, the client wants you to do this. Oh, yeah, of course we could do that. And you shouldn't say yes to everything. I mean, I think that's a big, number one lesson. You have to know what you're the best at in your industry and what you can really rock. And then you're going to see some successes. But did anybody remember 2007? Financial crisis? Well, workers' comp lags that indicator. We have a financial crisis. And so about 2 years later, all of a sudden, my world dropped from under me, and I wasn't ready. I mean, that's the first thing. It's like, oh my God, we're going to fail. And losing a huge chunk of your business, and then knowing what to do after that, because you were riding high, and then kaboom. I think that was probably the best failure lesson that I had in my entire career, is feeling that sense of doom and failure, and then knowing, you know what, we can overcome this. We can do this. And you just go back to the roots, go back to day one of how you started the company and what you did, and you then can overcome the failures.
And you did.
Yeah.
And you did. Yeah.
It's tough. These people were there with me.
Successful exit at the end, yes. I almost don't even like the word failure because they're lessons learned. We're not actually failing, we're just learning as we go. And I appreciate the journey that we take when we're learning. So I would say that as we're learning and as we're progressing along that journey, not having 100% expectation or plan that you can't pivot from is so important, because we do get comfortable and we do have times where something crashes and maybe it knocks you down, but it doesn't knock you out. And when you're leading a business, it's really important as a business leader to set the stage. It was one of my lessons. Set the stage that, yes, something knocks you down, but it doesn't knock you out. And how are we going to move forward with this? And how are we going to move forward? How are we going to plan? How do we stay focused? It's always, even when you do get that lesson, you're lucky enough, fortunate enough to get those lessons, they're gifts, and you learn from them. So it's not what happens to you, it's what you do with what happens to you. And as an entrepreneur, that has to be at the center of everything that you do.
Yeah, I think sometimes people use the word failure in the wrong context. I think I heard someone on a podcast, I love podcasts. I heard someone on the podcast say that failure isn't, stumbling or, not getting to where you are. Failure is when you give up and you don't try again, right? And so it's always, I use the terminology, we say fail forward. I say fail fast forward, right? So fail, but fast and in a forward direction. And I think, learning those lessons early on will help you continue to, grow throughout your career and face those challenges.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do a quick callback because we did mention that we're at the end of WCI, and we listened to a great panel session. We listened to a great panel session just a little bit ago, and one of the panelists really talked about their upbringing and failure. And so I'm just going to put that out there to the audience as an encouragement to go back and watch that as well, because it was a great story.
I think that's really interesting, Jen, to think that then we don't fail. Unless you give up, you're really not failing. So I think we've been ingrained to talk about, yes, of course you have failures. You make mistakes, and you learn how to overcome them. But to almost like, do we need to get rid of the word failure in our vocabulary?
It's reframing the narrative. Yeah. Like we just have to reframe the conversation. So if you set the expectation, you're not no one's perfect, right? We pivot and we learn. I always say, my opinion and what I do today is based off of the experiences and information that I have up until this point. If I can experience something new, if I can be given information, then that could change my perspective and what I want to do. And you talk about, hey, what we wanted to do yesterday might not be what I want to do tomorrow. But you have to have that mindset, right? And that's really the growth mindset of always growing. But the failure, I think we use that term and then it limits us and it paralyzes us. So how do you get out of that? How do you reshift the narrative?
Yeah, so when you just think about that mindset, it's learning on the way, and it's actually not planning for everything. Right? It's having the flexibility to move in the different direction that you need to move for yourself or the business. And they're gifts every time. Whatever you learned, whatever causes you to stand still, reflect, take that lesson in, learn, and move forward. And you said fast, Jen. Don't be afraid of making those decisions either. Because when you're afraid of, this is a lesson that we learned as entrepreneurs as well, or as business leaders, when you're afraid to make those decisions, those really, really hard decisions, you always regret it. So you don't have to be perfect when you're making those decisions. You don't have to be 100% confident that's the right decision. It's a decision, you move forward, and if you need to change it, you change it.
And you move forward with confidence.
Yes.
Right? You make that decision and you move forward.
So we're talking about all these skill sets, right? So I have so was it instilled in you, or did you learn it, right? So where or how did you develop the necessary skills to be able to navigate the business world from entrepreneurship?
Well, let's go back to that word I just said, confidence. You have to have confidence that you're not going to fail or you're not going to give up. I mean, and then there's a determination and a drive. But as far as skills, I mean, there's hard skills that you have to run a business. I mean, there's things about HR and taxes and finance that you actually need to know, and you have to surround yourself with good people that advise you. But at the end of the day, you have to know it. And how I decided to start a company was I was working for ADP when ADP wanted to get into workers' comp. And we wanted to get into workers' comp through mergers and acquisitions. And so my job as a workers' comp expert at the time was to go assess talent, the products, the markets that were there, and figure out who we want to acquire. And I kept seeing some women own businesses. I was like, how interesting is that? Or maybe it was a woman CEO, but somebody else was owning the business. It's like, maybe I could do that too. So literally, I went to the public library, to the business section,
They're still open?
literally the public library, to the business section on the shelf. I checked out every single book they had, which there were 13 of them, and on how to start a business. And I read them all. And I couldn't stop reading them. I was like, I wish they had more. I just want to read all of them. And then you learn what skills you need to have. And if you didn't have it, which skills I knew, it's like, okay, I need to figure out more about that skill. What do I need to do? How do I need to get that skill? And so you just kind of gain it. You gain life experiences to get those skills.
I agree with what you said about surrounding yourself with the right people. I mean, that's for sure. But I think some of those skills just you pick up along the way through experience, right? And you mentioned that as well. My husband and I started our first business like in the 80s, you guys. And we were videotaping weddings, and we were videotaping, professional basketball games, and we kind of did this business. We didn't even know how to file for a license to do business in the state that we were in, and we just figured it out. You just kind of leaned in, you asked questions, and you figured out. Ultimately, they weren't wildly financial successful businesses, but they were successful in the fact that we learned a lot. We learned what to do. Sometimes we learned what not to do. And, it set the stage, and it also eliminated fear. It built up courage to say, we can do this, right? And I think that courage and being courageous is one of the skills that you really need to embrace in starting a business.
I love this question. So when I think about that question, I actually think about the skill sets in the sense that knowing that what your risk profile is, right? If you're a risk taker, that's great. Entrepreneurship is somewhat aligned with that. Maybe not too much of a risk taker, but a risk taker, right? You have to have that sense. If you know that you love to solve puzzles, and you have a mindset that when you think about something and you're looking at a situation, you're asking why that situation is occurring and what you can do to solve it. If that's something that keeps on coming in your brain, if that's just the way you're wired, that's important for entrepreneurship. So understanding who you are as a person leads you to success, whether you decide to start your own business, decide to join a business, or whether you decide that certain roles in an organization are best fit for you. So I would say knowing who you are and then applying those skill sets to entrepreneurship. I think that it tends to be a sexy word right now, and it's not for everybody because it's hard. You got to have thick skin. Go ahead.
It's absolutely the hardest and most fun thing that I've ever done in my life. But yeah, I wanted to tag on to what you were talking about. You have to have the right people around you, and you have to know your own limitations of where you don't have the skill sets. But to me, more important than knowing your own limitations is you have to know what questions to ask. And you have to know what questions to ask the people that you're relying on to be the expert, because they might not always be the expert. They might not always have the right answer. But through that questioning and the curiosity, that's what's going to get you to, at the end of the day, having better and better answers.
I also think along with that, you have to be you can't be selfish. Starting a business is never about yourself. It's always about the people that you're serving and the people that you're working with. And so if you go into starting a business with, I'm just gonna make $1 million, that's your single point of failure right then. You have to understand who you're serving, and you're on the bottom of an org chart, you're not on the top. Because yeah, chief cook and bottle washer. And then to your point, when you do ask the right questions and you are relying on people, the actual letting go of that control of letting somebody else, don't twitch, Lisa, letting somebody else learn their lessons as well, because nothing's fatal.
There's so many things that I can unpack in everything that you guys just said, but I want to just have you guys talk about those that are listening to this, right? You guys are saying, be confident, know who you are, ask the right questions, be selfless. What would you say to those that are watching that is interested in entrepreneurship or think they want to go into entrepreneurship, but they might not have the confidence level, or they might not have that aha moment that says, I want to do this? Like, how do you even start the path?
I would say find a mentor, find a sponsor, talk to somebody who's done it, share your idea, start thinking about a business plan. And there's a lot of people out there. I don't know, I just recently read a statistic that it's like 50% of the people start a business of some size or shape, somewhere in their lives. So there are a lot of people out there that have at least some experience in doing this. So take your idea, take it to somebody and really talk it through. They'll help you. They'll help you ask some good questions, listen to their advice, and also they'll also help you with, I think, one of the most important characteristics, and I mentioned this before, is courage and being courageous, because it is a step. It's a big, hard step. And I think, those people can really help you along the way.
Well, Jen, I think one of the things about lifting people up and what the Alliance does, we've had so many speakers on really that self-confidence and courage and how do you bring it out of somebody. I just find it that everybody has something in them to give. And maybe it's not that you're bold with your courage, but maybe you're curious with your courage. And how do you draw it out? And maybe it is having a business partner, maybe it is having a board, maybe it is you think you can do it best on your own because you've had failures with having bosses before and people looking over your shoulder and you want to try it yourself. And all of those things have risk. I mean, there's a risk. And are you tolerant of the risk is probably the first question. If you're not tolerant of the risk and you're not willing to fail forward fast forward fail, then you probably shouldn't do it. Then you're not the right risk profile of taking that big leap. And are you willing to risk everything? And what does everything mean when you risk everything? I mean, it's risking financially, it's risking the people around you, it's risking the lives that now have entrusted you to build something, and they came and they followed you, they joined your company, and now you have to build it and do it, but you're taking a risk of whether that can actually happen. What do you think?
I don't think you can underscore the heaviness of responsibility that you have when you start a business and you're impacting people's lives, you're impacting their families' lives, and that's a heavy weight. So I'm going to go back to when you do think about starting a business, and Mary Jo, you said it, develop a business plan. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to leverage a network. And you'd be surprised when you do start to have the conversation, the knowledge that people will share, the sponsors that will come forward, and help build you up, because you need it every day. You need it every day. You need it when you're starting the business, you need it along the journey, and you need it when you think about an exit strategy. So I can't underscore the importance of having the right people around you that can help guide you. And sometimes that is reaching beyond what your comfort is. So it's reaching beyond your friends, it's reaching beyond your family, and it's having resources that you can tap. Lisa, you said you went to the library and read 13 books. The good news today is there's a ton of there's podcasts, there's a ton of resources out there, and you know, find your network, find your tribe.
I love that.
Artemis, just for a second. There's a little book. It's a quick read. It's called The Power of Who, and I don't know if you guys have read it, but it really talks about your network and your network's network and their network, and the fact that people want to be asked to participate and help. And we are oftentimes we limit ourselves by being fearful or reserved about asking people for help, but by and large, people like to be asked, people want to be asked, and people like to connect you with other people. So I really encourage you to pick up that book if you haven't read it. It's great because it's just an encourager to really utilize your network and your networks when you're in a situation like this and need some help.
No, I love that you said, in essence, you're not doing this alone. You're not on an island, but you can't be afraid to ask, right? And I always look at it, the worst, if you think of the worst, what's the worst that can happen? They say no, they're busy, but it's awe-inspiring when you allow you to be vulnerable and do the ask, how many people come and help. And you don't realize how many people are cheering you on and there to support you. Yes, there's naysayers, and yes, it's not always pretty, and it's ugly, and it's messy, and it's painful, but there's also beauty in it too, that there are people that really care about you and want to genuinely help. Or you know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody, and then they pick up the phone and they help you through that. Like, that I think is the most beautiful thing in the whole entrepreneurship realm journey, that the ones that you didn't know that would be there for you show up and they get you to that next step.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if you talk to entrepreneurs that have had businesses that have not succeeded, they wouldn't change anything because what they learned from that journey only propels them forward with whatever they choose to do. So there's really no such thing as failure.
No, I love that. I'm going to circle this around to, obviously 3 very powerful, successful women. Women face challenges of balancing personal life and professional life. We always talk about balance. I hate the word balance because what is actually balance? I don't know. But how do you manage to strike a balance and overcome the potential conflicts of home, family, work, business? Somebody tell me, how do you be successful in that? How do you do that? And as we just plugged WCI, we just had a session on burnout, right? And I love when Jenny Evans was talking about it. It's not, listen, we can't just sit at home and not do anything, right? There's a balance. Stress is great, but also it's a balance with rest and recovery and all those components. So I'd love to get you guys' thoughts on that, the challenges that just ultimately real life, what women face today with that piece.
Sure. I too loved the message from Jenny Evans. She was great because it really is saying that stress is going to exist, and how do we deal with it? And at ForzaCare, early on, lifting up a new business, we recognize that it's a busy, stressful time. Becoming out of balance, I don't like the word either, but is very easy. So we actually took this a step further, and we partnered with mindful-based coaching, and we have somebody that comes in. She does stress management classes for us. She actually provides one-on-one coaching for all of us in leadership throughout the organization, and really helps us with those things that we're trying to work on, so that we have an external partner in helping us to stay a little bit less out of balance. I think balance is hard in new business.
I think balance is hard in life in any way, but the most important thing to me is that I created this concept, I don't know, maybe 25 years ago, and I call it my balance star. So people talk about what is your North Star, where do you want to go? But if you picture a star, stars are unique. They don't have to have 5 points. I mean, they could have 11, whatever it is. But you have a star and you figure out what are the points that drive you and where do you want the importance of your life to be. What are those things? What brings you the most joy? And you place those on the point. And then you have to assess, how squished is your star? Do you have one little leg on the star and one really long part? Well, then you're not going to be your best self that way. So how do you stretch out all of your points to reach what you think that your potential is? But it's a lot of self-reflection. Now, I think part of your other question was, how do you balance all the demands on your life? And you have to have a village. I mean, the reality is you have to have a village. It is super, super hard to think that you can do all of this on your own. So create your village. Make sure that your village is aligned with what you're trying to do. Get their buy-in, whomever you define as your village, and make sure that they're willing to take this risk with you.
Yeah, it does take a village. It takes a whole community. I very much agree with you, Lisa. I also think about selfishly for yourself. How do you survive? And for me, I have to run. I have to walk. I have to be outside. And I can use some of that time as reflection time. As you said, reflection is really important, Lisa. You have to be able to process and move on. I also think that the ability to compartmentalize things, leave something check something at the door and be present, whether you're at work or whether you're with your family, the ability to do that. But in order to do that, all those things, you have to focus on yourself. And that focus on yourself could be physically, spiritually, mentally. And so taking that time to do that is really important. And don't sacrifice sleep, don't sacrifice just healthy habits is really important. So I would say staying focused on that is very important.
So I'm going to put you guys all on the hot seat because this all sounds great, right? Are you saying this now because of lessons learned and you burnt yourself out or you got to in a healthy place? And just being real, right? I can even say from my past life, there was a point where I was unhealthy. I threw myself so into work and I lost myself. I lost my I didn't know who I was as an individual. Work defined me. My title defined me. My company defined me. And then I was lost, right? And so now in this new chapter, one of our practicing principles is being intentional. And it's a daily intention to say, okay, this is stressful and this is a lot of work and all that, but we're going to pause and we're going to ensure that we stay healthy. And it's a leadership, it's from the top down, really, of that mindset of being present and ensuring that we lead by example. We're not, there's so many different pieces of this, but I go back, not to talk about me all the time, but is it because there was lessons learned? Did you hit that burnout and you're like, whoa, this is not it? Or have you had this whole mentality of, all right, I need to make sure that I'm present and healed through this whole journey?
No, I didn't know that. I think the story of Sisyphus pushing up the rock up the hill and it just comes crashing back on you, that hard work was kind of that Protestant work ethic that I grew up with, that you just have to work harder. If it's not working out, then go practice more, go do more, go try harder. And you do that. And my aha reality of that was pretty early in my career, was the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People book, Stephen Covey. And I actually was asked in my company if I was willing to be a facilitator. And so I went to the Covey Institute and got trained in 7 Habits. And there's some very, very important lessons in that 7 Habits. But one is called Sharpen the Saw. And it's the story of 2 loggers who have to, those big long saws that you go back and forth, and you're sawing these giant, giant logs. And it's a contest between who can saw their log in half first. And there was one team that stopped to sharpen their saw. And the other team was like, look at them, we're going to take over because we're just going to keep pushing through it. And the team that stopped to sharpen their saw won. And that visual was something that I did take into, that lesson learned, take it into entrepreneurship and say, you have to figure out how to constantly sharpen your saw. And everybody sharpens their saws in different ways. But it's important to make sure that you do that.
That's a great message, Lisa. And Jen, back to your message. Yes, yes, I've been in that same situation as you, where and I look back and I think, was somebody other than myself putting that pressure on me? And the answer was no. It is all coming from internally. But it's easy to fall, into a very unhealthy, both physically, mentally, spiritually lifestyle around whether it's in a new startup business in an entrepreneurial business or if it's in a role. I think it's really easy. It really can happen, and you look back and you think, how did that happen? And oftentimes I think you're to blame. So to your point, it requires a lot of self-reflection, a lot of self-work, but also accountability partners, right? Somebody that will tap you on the shoulder and say, you know what? Are you taking care of yourself? Somebody that loves you enough and lifts you up enough to say, I want to make sure that you're doing all the right things for yourself, and whatever that looks like. Your tribe, right? Your tribe. That's really important.
That's uncomfortable though, because I will say
is.
that Mary Jo is that check-in for me a lot of the times, and at first I'm like, why am I not doing something right? Like what's going on? and but you have to know it's coming from a good place, and it's really, you need to surround yourself with a tribe that genuinely cares for you, because you need that, because our personalities, we will run ourselves to the ground, right? And we do have to have somebody that says, hey, pause.
Absolutely. So the tribe is really, I'll just kind of build on that. When you said, what's that one event? Was there one event each day? What's that event that causes you to stop and think? I also have a tribe, but I have a tribe that doesn't live in my life, and I do a forum meeting once a month, and they force me to check in. And they don't live in my daily world, but they force me to discuss what's going on mentally, physically, relationship-wise, and spiritually. And I have to take a moment to step back and, one, share, and then number two, reflect and get feedback. And it's every month that I could describe events that cause me to pause and to think differently.
No, I think we can talk about this piece for hours and hours on lessons learned, and what we would say to those that are listening on how to, make sure that you can be successful, you can do this without totally going to the other side, right? There's extremes to everything, right? I'm going to kind of shift gears a little bit, and we're in workers' compensation, obviously. So let's talk about the workers' compensation market and the landscape. So how do you think entrepreneurship, the entrepreneurial landscape, has changed for women over the years, and what opportunities do you see for future generation female entrepreneurs in workers' compensation specifically?
Well, and I'm going to start generally, right? We know that there are more women in college even than men and graduating from college. So I think and we also know that the number of women entrepreneurs is growing. So I think we're making a lot of grounds, and I think we see that in our space as well as across business in general. So I think that's the good news. We also know that we still have some work to do, women in business, right? We know things like, I think in 2019, less than 3% of venture capital went to women starting new businesses, right? That's a big gap to make up. We also know that women-owned businesses tend to just generate less revenue than male-owned businesses. And all those business-related statistics across the business world, I think also extend into the workers' compensation arena. But I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity. Lisa, you talked about seeing it really early on when you looked at taking all those books off the library shelf and reading about it and seeing that there was opportunity.
Yeah, I think there's always been opportunity, and it's just who had the courage to take that next step. And I think that women traditionally do take a back seat. So over time, over my 60 years of life, I've seen that people are changing and evolving and realizing the value of diversity and the value that women bring in different fields. Now, interestingly, we all have been on the medical side of workers' comp in the majority of our career. So at one point, when working for an insurance company, I had the claims adjusting side as well. But most of my career, my love actually, is on the medical side. And there are more women on the medical side. I mean, that's just a fact. So it's easier, I think, for us to see the growth of women in the medical side of workers' comp. But how do we get more women involved in underwriting, involved in finance, involved in claims management, in fraud? You know, that's where you see fewer women, but still it's growing. It's growing. And I'm sorry, the alliance, the vision that we had and founding the alliance was, how do we get more women in workers' comp, and how do we get more women at the top in workers' comp? And when did we start this? 2015? 2015? So in 8 years, you see the accomplishment of that. I mean, you literally can see what we have done to the women in the industry and how faces light up and how the opportunities are open and how there's networking. And that's what just has to continue.
Yeah. So selfishly, I would love to see more women in technology. Technology is everywhere. Everybody has tech-enabled solution. And I believe that just in general, because there is more women and girls going into STEM programs, to Mary Jo, that rise will come up and it will impact workers' compensation. And I welcome women that bring new technology ideas to the table and challenge the status quo. I would challenge the workers' compensation industry to welcome those changes and to be more accepting of it. And I think, Jen, when we do that, you'll see change in the workers' compensation industry as a whole for women, that women don't just think about, hey, I was a nurse and I raised up in medical and I'm a caring person and therefore that fits my mold, versus I'm in a male-dominated technology space and I'm offering something very different to enhance the delivery of solutions to the workers' compensation space, and maybe I didn't get it from workers' compensation, I'm taking it from other spaces and bringing it into. So it's rising up in workers' compensation internally, but also letting external factors come into our space to accept new solutions from women-owned businesses.
Well, ladies, I have loved this conversation, but it's kind of time to wrap up. And I have a final question to ask each of you. So when we're thinking about those that are listening to this webinar and those that might be interested or thinking about it, or they have a strong passion on it, what advice would you give women who aspire to become entrepreneurs based on the lessons you've learned and experiences you've had?
Well, I think that's a really great and a really fun question. I just really encourage everybody to really think positive and to really stretch and reach out to those people that surround you to bounce your idea off, your plan off. Be courageous, and I just say, I just encourage everybody to take that leap. I really do. I think, to your point, it's been the hardest thing, but the best thing. So I just really say, just do it.
Yeah, I would say just do it as well. But I think there is something with being realistic on the expectation. Understand going into it with an expectation. Are you doing it for a pot of gold that you think that is going to be there at the end of whatever your exit strategy might be? Probably not going into it with the right idea. You have to go into it that you want the hard work and that you're passionate about something. And what is that passion? And you want to fulfill that passion, not just for yourself. You have to have something for yourself, or you're not going to put in the time and effort and enjoy the hard work. But you have to figure out what is it that you're doing and why, and who is going to benefit from it. Who are you going to light up because of what you're bringing to the marketplace? And knowing that going into it, who's going to light up to say, I'm going to want your product, I want your service, I want to be with you, and why? What's the why behind that? And understanding that before you jump.
I love the jump thing. Just jump right into the deep end. But I do think you have to be thoughtful. If you have a business concept that repeats itself in your head and it doesn't go away, and it's an itch you got to scratch, then you scratch it. I also believe that there's not a bad decision. It's what you do with that decision. So if your decision is to start a business or the decision is not to start a business, what are you going to do with those things? And then I would also say, Jen, don't be perfect. Golly, that's the single path to failure is if you lay out a plan and you think it's going to go exactly as planned, because it never does. And so enjoy the journey, enjoy the learning in that journey, and that will come, that then will lead to flexibility and being able to pivot your business and do all the things that we talked about. But don't think that just because you have an idea that it's going to go that way. Understand that you have to be flexible, and understand that there's lessons along the way, so there really isn't a bad decision on whether you start a business or don't start a business. It's what you do with that decision once you make it.
Well, you guys summed it up, perfectly. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your time, your insight, being vulnerable with telling your stories. This has just been an amazing time. I'm so filled up and energized. I'm like, all right, what are we gonna go do? Let's just jump in. Perfect. Who's ready? Thank you, ladies, for all of your time. Thank you to our attendees. All of our webinars are recorded and on our website at thealliancewomen.org. Feel free to reach out to any of them. I think each of these ladies would be open to having conversations. But thank you, and everyone have a great rest of your day.